My talk today is part 4 of the Berkowiczes of East Warsaw. The subtitle of The Showgirl, Shiksa, and the Shlemiel. My name is Leigh Dworkin, and I'm the chairman of the Jewish Genealogical Society of Great Britain. I hope you like the picture of me with 3 of my friends. Slight play on words there with the witches of Eastwick. Anyway, let's get started. So this is part 4, and in the first 3 parts, we've managed to blow a huge hole in the brick wall of researching my Berkowitz relatives, and I managed to put pictures to the names of many of my relatives. I'm descended from Harris or Gershon, but discovered many of his siblings. I managed to put pictures on Max, Louis, Fradel, Goldie, as well as finding a much sought after picture of my great-great-grandmother, Shosha Berkowitz. There's also one other brother, Isidore. And I managed to go back in time to about the 1760s in the Kledgman line. So absolutely delighted with my research. Presented the first 3 parts to my mother and expected to be written into the Berkowitz Hall of Fame, maybe the Dworkin Hall of Fame. But first thing she said to me was, "What about Arthur?" "Who's Arthur?" I go. "Why isn't there a picture of Isidore?" "Okay, you got me." And there's a story about a circus. But clearly, I was not done. There were some loose ends. My research needed to continue. So this is my mother. And the family story she told me was that Arthur was a gorgeous American cousin who'd come over during the war. And she remembered that he used to read her bedtime stories. She also told me that she thought there was a Berkowitz sister. It might have been called Sarah, had something to do with the circus. So I need to find out more. So, when I had been researching brother Louis, there was actually a son of his called Arthur, and I'd found a family tree online. There he is in an army uniform. It's certainly looking like I discovered the right Arthur, although he hadn't featured in the first 3 parts of my research. There he is. You see Arthur Berkwitt. Berkowitz name had changed to Berkwitt. His parents are Louis and Lena, and he also has a couple of children, Glenn and Alan, according to this family tree. This came from Cari Dorman, a tree that I'd found on Ancestry. So I looked into the details of Arthur A. Berkwitt. He was born in 1916, survived all the way to 2012, so must have been somewhere around 94 when he died. Arthur Aaron Berkwitt. And sadly, I didn't start this research till 2016, or I could have met him, but just missed him, unfortunately. Found out quite a lot of information about his army record, as well as his birth and death. And this is that Army World War II enlistment record. So we get to see that he was a private. He enlisted in 1943, soon after America came into the war. He had 3 years of high school education. Even his height and weight were noted. So quite a lot of information about Arthur. I wanted to find out more. So I decided to contact the owner of the tree, Cari Dorman, and I could see roughly how she fitted in. She was a daughter of the youngest of the children, Richard O Berkwitt. And I managed to find an obituary for Richard Orville Berkwitt, and he had died back in 2013. So a lot of information. Leigh Dorman must be the person who owned the tree of Potomac Falls in Virginia. Also another sister, Susan Mangiero of Monroe, Connecticut, and a grandson, Samuel Dorman as well. So lots of information to be had from obituaries. Here's a picture of Carolyn and a picture of Susan as well. And I tried for several weeks to get hold of these two sisters. In the end, I did succeed in getting hold of both of them, one via Facebook, the other via LinkedIn. And once I got in touch, proved I was a legitimate researcher, got sent lots of pictures of Richard O Berkwitt from Cari, and as a young man, gradually getting older, becoming an engineer. Also a picture of Richard, him with the beard, along with his brother Arthur, the one who'd started all of this research, and his wife Claire. And here again is Richard in later life, this time with Glenn Berkwitt, the son of Arthur, that we met slightly earlier, and that grandson Samuel that we read about in the obituary. Got sent lots of official documents and certificates. There's his birth certificate of Richard Orville Berkwitt, and also a couple of army bits of paperwork, cards talking about his military career. And some graduation pictures of him. There he is, third from the left, Berkwitt. And some university papers talking about when he received his degree. And they also sent me lots of pictures of Arthur, who I was researching. There are a couple of him in army uniform, and also one in later life. I asked about the tree and was sent the pictures that were used to populate all of the different siblings. We've already seen Richard Orville Berkwitt, but here are the rest. On the left we have Arthur, he was also known as Ocky, but brother Sam, sister Elsie, might be George, not sure, and Rose at the front there. And also the picture of Lena and Louis that went into forming that family tree. We already saw this picture of Glenn, and Cari introduced me to Glenn Berkwitt, and this was a very important introduction because he had lots of information about the family. Firstly, he had loads of photos. He also had his father Arthur's memoirs, and finally there was a video that I'll talk about later. That's a little bit of an old picture. Here again is Glenn with his wife Evelyn, a more recent picture. So let's look at the photos that Glenn could supply us with. We have the original family picture, but he also showed me some of the same people much earlier in their lives. Always nice to get those sort of pictures. Pictures of them when they were at presumably primary school. All very nice to have. Let's go through one by one. So Arthur, main person we were researching, and this is him in the picture that was used in the tree, but also from that early picture. We get to see Arthur throughout his life, his military career, getting older, his work life, eventually with his wife, and then in later life, getting to be quite an old man. We saw that picture once before in later life. And finally, some of the last pictures taken with his grandchildren, with his wife and grandchildren. The very final picture, apologies for it being a little morbid, but this was actually at the scattering of his ashes. So that was Arthur. Brother Sam, here he is with, might be his wife, Doris. And then lots of pictures, dapper man in a suit, obviously proud of his car, also had a military career, and then in later life, Sam Berkwitt. Elsie, not as many pictures to have. That was her in the original family group picture, and a few pictures of her throughout her life. Elsie Berkwitt. Sylvia, again, that was her in the original picture, and a few pictures of her in later life. Finally, George, not sure that's really him, because when I got more pictures of George, he looked completely different. Here he is again. Here he is in that original family group picture, and then in later life. And this is actually George, aged 93. And that's where we got to meet Glenn and his wife, Evelyn, in that family group picture. Final sibling, Rose. Quite early on in my research, we found that Rose had actually been born in England. So I had ordered the birth certificate. You can see that's Louis and Lena. She was known as Lily back then. When Rose was born, or Rosa was born in London. And Rose clearly married a Khan. Bit of a morbid picture again. Here's her tombstone with her husband, Harry Khan. And pictures of her throughout her life as a young woman with her husband, Harry. And I think this one's with Arthur. Another one with Arthur. And as an older woman, still kept that red hair somehow. And here with Lena, which leads us to Lena. So Lena and Louis, pictures of him in early life, getting older, with Arthur, as an old couple, maybe slightly older, and eventually, I believe Lena outlived Louis in quite late life. There was a mystery photo I got from my cousin Stacey a long time ago. It was actually marked Harry. I thought one time it might be Louis because his name was Arie or Louis Herschel. And Herschel is often Harry. Perhaps he went by the name Harry. The main reason I thought this picture was him was because of the round glasses. But comparing with that earlier family photo, I think the faces look a bit different. So I'm afraid that's still a mystery to solve. As well as photos, Glenn supplied me with Arthur's memoirs. He hadn't actually read them himself, but he supplied them to me, and of course I gobbled them up. This is Grandpa's Story by Arthur Aaron Berkwitt. Lots to read in this. It's 46 pages. And let me just pick out some choice sections. I consider myself to be a free thinker. Hell will remain on earth as long as any God exists. And clearly he had some quite strong views about religion. I'm an atheist, a secular humanist, a member of mankind. It's easy to blame the devil for our ills and deny the guilt of the church. Clearly some very strong views. But why did he write these memoirs? I never met or knew anything about my grandparents, and because of that, I feel emptiness and an unfulfilled wish. Many have been lucky enough to have had their grandparents nearby and felt their love. Yet some never really knew, or at least knew very little about the whole person. This is my attempt to let my grandchildren know me and to do for them what I wish had been done for me, Grandpa. So we understand Arthur quite a lot. Some stories from the memoirs. During the Depression years, until he went to join his brother-in-law. This was Harry Khan, that we already met, who was a carnival concessionaire. And there's mention of fakers, people dressed and acting as freaks, living skeletons, bearded ladies, sword swallows, tattooed ladies, etc., etc. I think we found the circus that my mother had heard about. When I went back to look at some of those pictures, here was Arthur with Rose, and it's a matchbook from the Copacabana. That's something to do with the circus, nightclub maybe. But when I look at this picture, it's fairly clear that it was Rose and Harry Khan who were connected with the circus. There's Harry Khan again. Arthur and Rose. Rose Berkwitt Khan and Harry Khan. More interesting stuff from the memoirs. There's a story of when he took some leave from the army. He was in England and he went to find his Berkowitz cousins. The only trouble with was the only thing he really knew was the name Berkowitz. Didn't know what they did, and so it was an adventure. He basically just asked around for Berkowiczes, and because he didn't know, whenever someone asked him a question, he said yes. You know, is he a barber? Yeah, I think so. So he then started looking for a barber called Berkowitz, somewhere near St. Paul's Cathedral. He looked for a barber shop, found one near St. Paul's Cathedral, knocked on the door, and unfortunately, the barber shop was closed. It was the weekend. However, there was a cleaner inside, and the cleaner was going home soon. And apparently the barber lived somewhere near the cleaner, so he got on the same bus. Just thought he would see what he could find. And it was an adventure. He might be chasing the wrong person, but eventually he gets to roughly the right area and starts knocking on doors. One of the doors, someone asked, "Oh, is there a new baby? There's a barber with a new baby nearby." "Oh, yes." He didn't know. And so he gets closer to the real address, knocks on the door, and lo and behold, the father of the new baby turns out to be his first cousin. Amazing coincidence. He got lucky. And that first cousin was my Grandpa Dave, David Berkowitz. The baby was my uncle, Baby Barry. Not looking so much like a baby now. Some of the other people we met earlier in the story, there were David's sister Millie, Sally and Golda, and Golda's fiancé Sam, who Arthur actually shared a bed with, and he tried to entertain him with some English jokes, which Arthur didn't really get. What's interesting is here's a picture of Golda and Sam Morris, dancing at my brother's bar mitzvah. That was 1974. And it's just wonderful to be able to read about all these people earlier in their life in a memoir hidden away in America for many, many years. So that's the memoirs. Let's move on to the video that Glenn shared with us. And it turned out this was a video of Theda Berkowitz. Now, Theda was the daughter of Max. He's the brother of my great-grandfather. And sadly, Theda had lost touch with her sisters and the rest of the family, but happened to end up living quite close to Glenn, and so because they were cousins, they were quite close. And Glenn shot this video of Theda. Her married name was Street. 2 weeks before she died, when she was in hospital, it was a celebration of her life. And I'm not going to show the video here, but you know, it was good to hear from Theda's children. By this time, her husband had already died, but hear from Glenn, hear from Glenn's family, and hear from Theda and her two daughters, Julie and Sylvia. Now, Theda was actually my mother's pen pal for many years, and so this was quite nice. Unfortunately, I did lose touch after some years, but it was nice to see Theda again. And also my cousin Stacy, her mother, Shirley Jean, had lost touch with Theda, and certainly Stacy was very emotional when she saw this video. Let's switch now to the question mark I mentioned earlier, the picture of the one sibling I hadn't managed to find, Isidore. I've been searching for this for many years, but it was kind of bothering me, a one missing sibling. Now, this is the family tree, and you can see we've fleshed it out. We've got my great-grandfather on the left, Gersh, or Gershon, or Harris, as he was known in English. Goldie and Sam Stein, big family there. We just talked about Louis and Lena's family, including Arthur and Richard O Berkwitt. But Max, I mentioned before, Sadie and Max, was another sibling. And I managed to contact that family and flesh it out. However, with Isidore's family, I hadn't had much luck. I had found some grandchildren of Isidore, but I failed miserably to get in touch with them. And so there's kind of a dotted line here. I needed to try and get a handle on that. Fortunately, I managed to find a cousin through an uncle, in fact, of those three Berkowitz grandchildren. And using Facebook, we managed to make contact. And I asked him, what happened to Isidore? Isidore had been there on many of the censuses, but was missing on the 1940. I assumed he must have died because there were 4 of his children and his wife Fanny. But it turns out the story from Jay was he'd never known his grandfather, Isidore, because he'd actually deserted the family. He ran off to California with a Shiksa, a non-Jewish woman who worked for him in his box factory. And Jay didn't even know this lady's name. And Isidore was never seen on again. They have no photos of him, and his murder had been destroyed. So, I still have a question mark. Bit tricky, but I did get to find out exactly how the 3 Berkowitz grandchildren fitted in. It turned out that Jay's brother Scott had married a lady called Christy. Unfortunately, the marriage hadn't survived, but there was a divorce there, but still in touch with Jay. And he also told me that because of Isidore's desertion, a lot of the grandchildren had sort of stuck together. And here's a very recent picture of Scott and Jay with 3 out of 4 of other grandchildren of Isidore. These are actually children of Herman. And so very close family. This is from the last Thanksgiving. Jay also supplied me with some other pictures of Fanny and Georgie and Herman, and some other side of the family. Georgie and Herman are here too. as well as Fanny being on the left with the short hair. So it was nice to get more photos. Now, because I knew that he'd run away to California, suddenly a number of records that I'd found and discounted began to make a bit more sense. I found there was a death record for an Isidore Berkowitz. Apparently he died in 1962 in Los Angeles, California, and that definitely could be our Isidore. And I also found a marriage in Los Angeles, California, to a lady called Anna Jean Padula. So that was interesting. Might be the right person, might not. But when you look at Isidore's parents, Sam Berkowitz matched what we knew. And my great-great-grandmother, Shosha Gagor, is down here as Sophie Gayor. It's close enough to be conclusive proof this is the right Isidore. And so I think we found our Shiksa. Certainly a lot more successful than my searching for Shiksa on Ancestry. The marriage was in 1950. I took a look at the original record as well. Here it is, white on black. And a few interesting things on this. In particular, Isidore apparently is widowed, but having talked to Jay, turns out that Fanny did not actually die until 1988. And reliable evidence from both Jay and there was some information that Herman had been responsible for the funeral. And so Isidore definitely not widowed at this time in 1950 when he got married to Anna Padula. I looked more for Anna Padula and found some trees on the internet via Ancestry, and here's a nice picture of her with some nephews at the beach. Another record that started to make sense was Isidore had been missing, wasn't with Fanny and the 4 Jewish sons on the 1940 census, but here now is an Isidore with Anna in 1940, but I was a bit surprised to find that he had 3 new sons. There's Jerry, Robert, and Saul, and written in pencil is Mayer, so Saul Mayer, the youngest. And you can see that this is the 1940 census. Clearly these children are born between about 1934 and 1938. So I had this picture of Isidore dying. In fact, he'd run off with his young lady, had some children, and eventually did the right thing and married her in 1950. And it's definitely the right Isidore because, again, he's a proprietor of a paper box factory. Paper box maker is his profession. So this allowed me to fill in the tree. There's that picture of Anna and the children, Jerry, Robert, Saul Mayer. And the tree that I got this information from was actually from an Amy Berkowitz. And she turned out to be the daughter-in-law of the youngest child, Saul Mayer. Here's the tree information from Amy Berkowitz. And she supplied lots of useful information. This is Saul Mayer and his wife, Crystal, who's still alive. And though Saul Mayer is no longer with us, and they've celebrated their 50th anniversary. Very interesting. They married quite young. And so we can put in a little bit more information into the family tree. We have Anna, we have Saul Mayer and Crystal. And one of the first questions I asked is, can you supply me with a picture of Isidore? And they duly obliged. And here's a picture of the 3 boys with Isidore and I was delighted. My search for a picture of Isidore was over. I emailed it around to everyone in the family and said, right, we've got him. Only trouble is, here is another one of Anna in slightly later life, again with Saul, the youngest. And so from this, I can fill in a few more pictures of Jerry and Robert, and also another one of Saul. There's another one of Anna in later life. So I have this picture of Isidore. The only trouble is I was discussing it with my cousin Stacy, and she said, "Why does Isidore look like an elderly Italian gentleman?" Kind of looked at this picture. I really badly wanted this to be Isidore. That's what Amy had told me, and she'd got it from Crystal. But is this really a 52-year-old Jewish man? He does look remarkably like an elderly Italian gentleman. Anna Padula is Italian, much more likely to be someone else. So on the 1940 census, we see that when this picture was taken, Isidore's probably only 10 years older than the census, maybe 52, but Anna's father is Gerardo Padua, and he would have been age 75 at that time. And we know that from the 1920 census, where he's there with Anna, Annie, as it's written here. So I got overexcited, and I went back to Crystal and said, is this really Isidore? And she said it was, but I was fairly sure it was, in fact, Gerardo. So I decided I had to try another part of the family, and I looked into contacting Jerry Berkowitz's family. He wasn't still alive, but I did manage to find an obituary for him. And again, this said he was the son of Isidore Berkowitz and Anna Padula Berkowitz, born in 1933. He had a very distinguished military career, 100 combat missions flown in Vietnam, retired as a colonel in 1980, and received Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, and the Air Medal. So very, very impressive. But it also mentioned his surviving family, his wife Virginia, and also his children. And I managed to contact them on Facebook. This is Thomas, also Michael, a daughter, Susan Byrne, it's a married name, and also Sarah Berkowitz, Michael's daughter. And again, I asked for them to send me a picture of Isidore, and this came from Susan Byrne. She sent me this picture, a very nice looking dog, but sadly another elderly Italian gentleman. When I double checked, she's with her, she said, "Oh, no, sorry, that's not Isidore. In fact, that is Gerardo Padula, Anna's father." And finally, they did send me a picture of someone who at least looked like a Jewish Berkowitz person, fits in the family much better. This was taken in 58, but then they sent me lots more pictures of him with Anna in earlier life, and looking very happy. I think it was definitely a happy second marriage. Other pictures of Jerry, Saul, and Bob, the three sons of Anna and Isidore. And so that allows me to fill in the family tree with some more up-to-date pictures. There's Jerry, children Tom, Mike, Susan Byrne, and finally that elusive picture of Isidore. Also a more up-to-date picture of Robert and one of Saul Mayer. Other information I got from this part of the family from Susan Byrne was a business card for Isidore, and you get to see he's changed his name to I. Berk from Isidore Berkowitz, and the name of his paperbox company. It's actually named after Anna, Anne's Novelty Case Company. So that's interesting. This is actually from New York before they'd gone to California. And also a bit of a gold mine, an original Russian passport. You can see the Cyrillic writing. And when I got that translated, it said, issued at Warsaw to Isidore Berkowitz, it's Isidore's original name, in 1911, just before he traveled. I think it was in 1913. The resident of Pruszków, which is a Warsaw district. And by then he hadn't married Fanny yet, so he was a single person traveling. Last time I was in Poland, I went to visit Pruszków and tried to walk the same streets, but it's basically very near to Warsaw, and I certainly visited the cemetery there. Did find some Berkowiczes, but not the right ones. Finally, that question of divorce or bigamy. I did find a record in New York from 1945. And if we zoom in on that, we do see that the record says both Isidore Berkowitz and Irving Berk, that name that matches the business card. And this is in the Bronx County divorce and civil case records. So it does look like Isidore actually went through with the divorce from Fanny. He wasn't a bigamist, but he did make a mistake on his marriage certificate to Anna, where he said he was widowed, and for making that mistake, he gets to be called the Schlemiel in the subtitle of my talk. So, in conclusion, I think this is the end of my Berkowicz research. I've gone back in time, but now I've blown an even bigger hole in the brick wall and got Isidore's picture, which I'm absolutely delighted with. I now know what all of the siblings look like and have that picture of Shosha, the only picture I have of a great-great-grandparent. If you have any questions about the Berkowiczes, be delighted to share my research, answer any questions. A little bit more work still needed to find out what happened to Friedel, who we think went to Argentina after being the last sibling to remain behind in Poland with Shosha. But she did marry and we think went to Argentina. Any questions, feel free to email them through to me at chairman@jgsgb.org.uk. Thank you very much.